we talked a lot about personal growth, personal development. We talked a little bit about community opportunities to serve and lead. I think that finding a really, really, really challenging problem and having the courage to work towards a solution, even if it's not your, your work yourself, but finding something that's so far off that forces you to think, it forces you to learn, it forces you to press. I think that's one of the keys that, the last thing you want in your growth to like self-realization is to actually realize like you don't that's not what you want, right? So like so for a person who may be like really into like pets and like saving like rescue dogs and stuff, right? So identifying a really big problem and saying like, here's this massive problem. There are, roosters in Brazil that have like overtaken the population. I don't know, just making that up, right? So like, how do I solve this really, really, really big problem that I don't have the resources for? I've never been to Brazil, right? It keeps you curious and it keeps you working towards something greater than yourself. So even if some scientist in Puerto Rico figures out the answer, you're now in tune with something that's 5 or 10 times higher than even your comprehension or understanding, more than the resources you have, more than the physical ability you have to get to Brazil to make an impact. But finding an amazingly big challenge that you can kind of use to reference, like, how do I fix this problem, or what role can I serve in fixing this problem, gives you such a long-term advantage as far as a goal that you can work to achieve, that maybe you'll have a chance to impact and make better. Maybe you won't, but it keeps you sharp.
Mm. So what's your like amazingly big challenge that you are kind of
I've got a couple. The one that I share with you is in the U.S. we have what we call historically Black colleges and universities, and so these are schools and colleges that were formed right after slavery for exclusively for Black people, right? So Black people could not go to like Harvard, like we couldn't go to Harvard, so we had to create like a smaller university down the road that was underserved. It wasn't as well furnished, right? Well, these colleges were the beginning of, I'd say like my grandparents achieving higher education and higher learning. And they were thriving, like I say, like my grandparents' time. They were sustaining during my parents' time. Those universities are in dire condition today, right? So there are some kids who can't afford Harvard. They may be Harvard intelligent, but they can't afford Harvard. So they have to go to, Morehouse, Spelman, or any of these other like really, prestigious, like really, really academically rigorous schools. But because there are fewer kids going, because there are fewer dollars going there, these schools are beginning to shut and close their doors. And
mm,
like most things, like global warming, that is happening so slow that it doesn't set a red flag. But every couple of years, like one of these major schools closes. So one of the big challenges, or one of the big problems I'm looking at, and again, maybe I can solve it, maybe I can be a piece of a solution. But how do we keep these doors open, for these major universities, because these kids need these schools. And so, again, maybe I can play a role in it, maybe I can't, but that's bigger than me. That's bigger than me. That's bigger than my kids, my family. If I can be a part to figure that out, then I've done something good for the ecosystem.